And our first talker is going to be Sascha Clark Danylchuk. And she's going to be talking to us about how we can focus on the importance of each fish and how that can be a catalyst for conservation. Thank you very much.
Do you want that? Good morning. I had to bring my notebook up because I have so many notes after hearing Judy speak and things that I wanted to be able to relate back to her presentation. So I run Keep Fish Wet. We're a US-based nonprofit. We focus on education and outreach related to best practices for catch and release. We don't promote catch and release per se, but advocate for anglers using best practices for fish that they're releasing, whether that's by choice or through regulations such as size limits. So I spend a lot of time thinking about how anglers and scientists communicate, trying to create more opportunities, open up pathways to create a better bridge for communication. And so that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. My story starts with this paper that I published with a bunch of my board members and other colleagues about a year ago, thinking about how individual outcomes matter in the context of recreational fisheries management. And this was a point-counterpoint paper. We argued that individuals matter. The other side argued that it's really populations and stocks that matter in the context of management. And a lot of our 10 points, which you can see up here, focus on basic biology, and then even economic and a lot of social points up here. So everything from, because individual level impacts can scale up, to thinking about social license, thinking about how we future-proof recreational fisheries in the face of climate change. And so I was gonna stand up here and talk about this and how we can apply this to conservation. And then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that we actually missed a point on this. And I think it's pretty important for thinking about conservation. And the point is that I want to add to this list is that when anglers interact with fish and their frame of reference for fish is at an individual level, they catch one fish at a time, they compare one fish to the next. But that's not really how we, and I'm a collective we as scientists and managers and conservationists, that's not how we think about fish. We think about stocks or populations. And so there creates this disconnect when we're trying to communicate to anglers about fisheries that they're not connecting at a population for the most point or a stock level. They're just thinking about the last fish that they caught. And so that makes communication more challenging. Judy was talking about, I have to look at my notes to get the right phrase, communicating more effectively and tools to do that. And I think this really plays into that, is how we're communicating. And this is really important when it comes to fish conservation, because I agree with Judy 100% that scientists can't stand back and be a neutral body anymore, and we need to be participants in conservation. And I also believe that that anglers really want to be a part of conservation, and we need to have them be a part of conservation efforts. When the absence of good information from us, they're going to come up with their own conservation strategies. And sometimes they're fantastic about this. Thank goodness anglers have been telling each other for decades to make sure to get their hands wet before they handle fish to prevent removing slime. We still don't have any great studies on how different gloves or sunscreen on your hands, things like that, influence slime removal. But they've been telling each other to get their hands wet. But sometimes the conservation strategies that they come up with come from a good place, but maybe are less effective. So, Steve, these are three that we see in North American fisheries, or I see in North America. The second one isn't even a North American fishery, but you know, conservation strategies that anglers have come up with. And Steve talked about this first one. When if a fish is bleeding from the gills, you can pour Coke down its throat, and that's going to stop the bleeding. The second one that we hear and see widely, especially on social media, is that milkfish can fight for so long because they're vegetarians. And the third one is that if you take, I hear this for albies or other little tuna, and when you're returning them, if you throw them as hard as you can, head first at the water, because they're ram ventilators, that means more oxygen is going to, or dissolved oxygen is going to pass over their gills, and that's going to help revive them faster. So these ideas become entrenched in fishing communities, and we've actually done some, 2 studies on the top 2 here to try to help either support what anglers are doing or help change attitudes. Sometimes these things can be harmless. Sometimes they're not so harmless, like having your fish bleed out because you've now poured Coke over its gills. But we need to think more about providing conservation strategies. Otherwise, we spend a lot of time dealing with debunking these sort of ideas or getting anglers to focus in a better direction. So we've got 2 examples of a couple different initiatives from the environmental space that have kind of focused more, taken big scale problems and focused more on the individual level. And the first one, and we use this one a lot kind of as a reference point, is, the Leave No Trace movement. And this comes, I don't know how widespread this is in the world, but we see it a lot in North America. It's this movement to try to think about how people interact in public spaces and wild spaces in particular. And so they took this huge problem of the degradation of wild public spaces and tried to focus it on an individual and how they interact in those places. So they have 7 principles, and there's a variety of education initiatives around this. I just put an example of, one of their principles up here: minimize campfire impacts. And they've done a really good job about reaching a huge amount of people. And this has been a movement that's from the bottom up been able to change how we manage and the policy related to how people behave in wild spaces. So this is a really good example, and we reference this one all the time for a variety of different reasons. They've been hugely impactful in what they do. So Leave No Trace is one. The other one that's a little less formal, but is the movement to reduce single-use plastic bags. In the US in particular, I know this is a global one, but in the US in particular, it's less organized than it is in some other countries. But studies have shown, a study in 2024, bans in even 3 states and 2 cities were able to reduce single-use plastic bag use by 6 billion bags per year. So thinking about how, each time an individual goes to the grocery store, goes shopping, trying to encourage them to bring reusable bags. And as I said, it's less formal. A lot of it is just social pressure in the US, but that's been hugely, hugely successful. So there's ways that we can reframe some of these big problems. I mean, single-use plastic bags being the world's #1 consumed item, and try to get it reach individual at an individual level has been really successful in these two other movements, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from trying to reframe our messaging around that. In the fish space, Tuna Champions, which is out of Australia, specifically the University of Tasmania, has been successful in this. They're really good at messaging to individual anglers, regardless of what they're going to do with their catch at the end. If they're releasing, keeping, tagging, trying to help them think about how they interact with each fish. And they've just expanded. Initially, it was just for southern bluefin tuna. Now they cover most of the tuna species in Australia. So this is another really great example of an initiative that has reframed an issue at the individual angler level. So to wrap up, I think that there's a lot of benefits that we can have when we're trying to create more opportunities for for communicating with anglers by changing our frame of reference and thinking about how one angler interacts with one fish at a time. It also helps be a catalyst for a lot of the other goals that we have. It allows better peer-to-peer communication. It helps get to some of the issues that Judy was talking about with the information action gap. This using more effective communication can help narrow that a lot. And then a lot of what we are trying to do is create better communication channels. So this is really important. And it goes back into those 10 things that I listed at the beginning, 10 ways that why individuals matter. And those are definitely part of that. But I really think that this other point, especially when we're talking about conservation initiatives and trying to frame things for anglers, is also really important. So thank you. Want that one?
Thanks very much, Sascha. We've got time for some questions. Anyone? There's one.
Thanks for that, Sascha. I'm a big Keep Fish Wet fan. I'm curious, what's your process for adding new material to educate, or do you still just stick to a strong foundation that you began with, and it's more about scaling that out as opposed to evolving the material?
Yeah. So we started out with basic best practices, right, for any angler, any type of fishing, any type of water body anywhere in the world. We still stand behind those. Everything's science-based, so things evolve as the science evolves. We're starting to spread out and do more species-based best practices as well, and that's also the direction that the science is taking us. So kind of trying to follow a lot of what's happening with the science on best practices or on effects of catch and release, and mirror that in what we're advocating.
Cool. We've got time for another quick question. Michael.
Thanks, Sascha. You started by saying you don't promote catch and release. Would you expand on that? It seems a strange comment to me.
Yeah, so we acknowledge that there's places and reasons why people want to fish for food. I mean, I still love eating fish, so if we're telling people that no matter what fishery they're part of, that they should only be practicing catch and release, then we're taking away the option for people to eat fish. So that's why we stick to, whether it's because of regulations or because of personal choice that you're practicing catch and release. So the way that our regulations are based, pretty much all anglers at some point will have to release fish. And so that's really what we're focused on.
Great, thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause. Next up, we have Taryn Murray.